Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Jonah, the 4th chapter. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was very angry. So Jonah was pissed, right? He was pissed that here it is, and he's going to explain that to the Lord, right? He's pissed off. He had to, he went through all of that, okay? In his mind, he kind of felt like, well, I knew that the Lord was going to do this, right? I knew that the second they just, it doesn't matter how, messed up things they've done, the second they humbled down, the Lord is so merciful, he's going to, have mercy on them. And now, I came all the way here. These niggas are wicked as shit. And yet, they still good. So Jonah was pissed off. He wasn't trying to hear that. Verse 2, and he prayed unto the Lord and said, I pray thee, O Yahweh, was not this my saying when I was yet in my country? So isn't this the same thing that I said back in Israel? Therefore I fled before unto Tarshish, for I knew that thou art a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repentest thee of the evil. From reading it, right, you can imagine something like imagine if the Lord told you, go to, I don't know, go into Edom Central or something like that, all right? And they're doing a whole lot of wicked shit. Maybe Amalek is doing a whole lot of wicked shit over there. And he's like, go and prophesy and tell them they better stop before I come and blow up their stuff. I come, Most High come and judge them. Let me say it that way. And you're like, one, you as a man, you probably wouldn't even want the Lord to even offer that slightest mercy to them. All right. But two, that it won't last because they're not meant to eternally follow the ways of righteousness. And even if they did feign themselves, right, to stop, it wouldn't be for long. They'd be right back at it again. But anyway, back to Jonah. So Jonah's pissed. It says here, slow of anger or slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repentest thee of the evil. Therefore now, O Yahweh, take, I beseech thee, my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. So he had enough. That's how it mentioned he was very angry, right? That's how pissed off he was. He was like, look, I'm done. I'm done. I'd rather just go back to the sparrow at this point. Then said the Lord Yahweh, doest thou well to be angry? So is it really, are you justified in being angry? Is it really necessary for you to be this angry? Right? NLT, it says, the Lord replied, is it right for you to be angry about this? So Jonah went out of the city and sat on the east side of the city, and there made him a booth, which is like a shelter, and sat under it in the shadow till he might see what would become of the city. So he wanted to see, right? 40 days, right? Let's see if the Lord, what happens, right? They're feigning themselves to repent and all that. Let's see if they actually do, and let's see what happens. And the Lord prepared a gourd, which is like some form of a plant that eventually would give him shade, right? And made it to come up over Jonah. So it grew. And eventually it covered wherever he was, that it might be a shadow over his head to deliver him from his grief. So Jonah was exceeding glad for the gourd. So he was happy about it, right? And where he was dwelling. Because when the sun would come out, he would have that shade and, he was content. He was happy about it. But God prepared a worm when the morning rose the next day, and it smote the gourd that it withered. So the Lord set up, a worm or some worms, some animals that basically ate up, that tree, whether from the stem or whatnot. But eventually the tree ended up withering, right? It died. And it came to pass when the sun did arise, that God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat upon the head of Jonah, that he fainted. Now, he didn't literally pass out, but he was, pretty much at the point because the sun was so hot, and wished in himself to die, and said, it is better for me to die than to live. And reading this in another translation, you know where I'm going. In the NLT, it says here, and as the sun grew hot, God arranged for a scorching east wind to blow on Jonah. So here it is. He was already pissed off. And he finally gets a little, relief, from that gourd, which he's happy about, as he's watching to see what would happen in Nineveh. And the Lord's like, shit, there you go. So now he got that hot-ass sun beaming on the back of his neck. It says here, the sun beat down on his head until he grew faint and wished to die. Death is certainly better than living like this, he exclaimed. Sometimes when it's really hot outside, it makes you more aggravated. that hot ass sun is just beaming on you, and it's just like, damn, it's intensifying everything down to the last bit of emotion you got there. So he's already pissed. It says here, and God said to Jonah, doest thou well to be angry for the gourd? And he said, I do well to be angry, even unto death. So the Lord said, now you're mad about the gourd. Are you justified in being mad about the gourd? You mad about this too? And Jonah was like, yeah, I'm pissed. I'm that pissed. Then said the Lord Yahweh, thou hast had, and the Lord did that to show Jonah something, right? And he's going to tell him, no, he's saying, you had pity on the gourd, for the which thou hast not labored, neither madest it grow, right? So that gourd, which grew of its own, you didn't plant it, you didn't nurture it, you didn't cause it to grow, you didn't guide it, but it came up, right? Which came up in the night. It grew really fast, and it gave you that shade, and and perished in a night. So meaning that it grew just as quickly as it grew, it perished, right? And then the Lord is saying here, if you had pity on this gourd that you didn't plant, you didn't labor, you didn't put anything into it, and now that it's perished, you're upset. And should not I spare Nineveh, that great city? So you were willing to spare the gourd if you had that choice. How much more for a whole city of people, right? And should not I spare Nineveh, that great city, wherein are more than 60,000 persons, which is 120,000 persons that cannot discern between their right hand and their left hand, and also much cattle. And discerning between your right and left is basically like not having the eye solve, right? To know, like, all right, don't do this, don't do that. Now, it's not necessarily like on a literal level, because they weren't idiots, but the righteous ways of the Lord were not instilled in them. So at the very least, the Lord gave them that warning. And at this point, after the warning, if you still continue to transgress, then there is no, it's not like you can't say there wasn't any favor shown to you. And keep in mind, the scriptures do say the Lord does cause the sun, I think it's the sun or the rain, to come down both on the righteous and the wicked, or the just and the unjust. And similarly with, it's kind of similar because he did bring this judgment later on. We know that, right? When you go into the book of Tobit, the Lord did end up destroying Nineveh. But when you go back to the time of, I think it's in Genesis, but it's in the Torah, where the Lord mentioned concerning the Canaanites that he was not going to drive them out of the land just yet, because their iniquity, right, hadn't fulfilled its measure. You see, so there was still some time, there was still, some period of time that they would remain, on that land without having that being driven out via the judgment of the Lord, because they hadn't hit a certain measure yet. Okay, which is similar here with the Assyrians. They hadn't hit a certain measure yet, but once they did, without fail, the Lord brought them down. So that brings us to the end of the book of Jonah, the 4th chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.